Good afternoon. I think it was just yesterday that I talked about. I kind of compared the four paths of yoga, traditional yoga, yoga as action. Yoga as union, sorry. Yoga means union, not the hatha yoga that we think of sitting in postures. It's gotten so popular that we need yoga pants and a yoga mat. We need, the list goes on. But the four paths of yoga and then Advaita, Vedanta, seen as another branch of Hinduism. And I went through them briefly and ended up saying that more or less all roads lead to Rome. I've always had this visualization of a very windy path, full of switchbacks, full of plateaus, full of climbs, full of descent, until the sacred mountain looms in the misty clouds on the periphery of your vision. And this is how I've seen the path, literally stepping stones. Not a paved path, not even a dirt path, but carefully laid stepping stones that balanced so that you can pause and rest as needed, with plenty of places to put down that 200-pound bag of shit that we all carry around that sooner or later we have to discard. And when I say bag of shit, I'm talking about memories, regrets, jealousies, angers, thoughts of revenge, clinging, materialism, even ultimately seeking. Seeking might be the last thing in your bag. But at some point, I know my posture could be so much better as I sit. I try to straighten. And I remember going to Muktananda, Baba. Muktananda's fortune teller, trained in the Vedic tradition of astrology, and he was the son of the son of the son. It was almost his caste, fortune teller. He's comes from a long line of fortune tellers, and he settled in Santa Monica with Baba before Baba passed on, transitioned, left his physical body, and he remained behind. And he got the practice became quite lucrative because he became more or less the fortune teller to the stars. The Beverly Hills crowd, the movie people. But anyway, I'll think of his name. It's not readily available, but I had a reading. Geez, must 1980, almost 40 years ago, when he was living in Baba, in Muktananda's ashram in Santa Monica. And I think he hadn't established his practice, and he was just getting by. Like I said, living in the ashram, which is a spiritual hospital when all is said and done. It's a place it's not a place that you go to cloister to live permanently. It's a place of refuge that you can heal, begin the process of healing under the close eyes of many of the acolytes. But I remember him saying that I felt that I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and that's the burden that I always felt. And he laughed. I mean, it's as if this was the most ridiculous thought that he'd ever encountered. Who indeed could take the weight of the world on his shoulders? In the mythos, it was Atlas, wasn't he? Atlas shrugged. Atlas had the world on his shoulders. Well, I grew up with that burden. And I remember being a little bit put up. Why does he find this so funny when it's been such a burden for me, the weight of the world on my shoulders? So I have a long tradition of being, I used to call it a 100 bag, but now it's probably 100-pound bag of shit that we carried on our shoulder. And now it's up to 200, and maybe mine was even more. But this getting back to, I mentioned that there's a lot of places that you can let your burdens down along this journey. And for me, I actually could see the steps no more than a few in advance. Sometimes only the next step. At best, 2 or 3, on a good day, 4. And each step was a practice in mindfulness, was a practice in being in the moment, being here now. Each step was your meditation, was your practice. Each step was the Dharma, the teachings that you were ready for. So and it is a spiral after all, isn't it? This path leading to the promised land. At the time you're on the journey, you're seeking reunion. You want to reunite with the infinite because of differentiation. You thought you were separate from. And one of the understandings of the 4 yoga paths is this idea that of Atman and Brahman. Brahman being the infinite, Atman being the infinite within you. And they taught that you were born, that you would live, that you would die, that the Atman, the spiritual part of you, not the personality, none of the trappings of the bodily prison. This Atman will be re-expressed in a new form, in a new body. And this was the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering. And as you got to a point in your evolution, your development, you began to understand, you began to yearn to escape this wheel, this samsara, life and death. That this samsara is another word for suffering. And the longing to get out of the suffering state, or at least to begin to understand it. Not as you study it, not only will you understand it, but you'll begin to appreciate it for the opportunity it is. For, to my understanding, the only way that we can go through this process, that we can start to yearn for union, labeling it reunion in our early misunderstanding. We need a physical vehicle, a physical body. So within the yoga tradition, there's 4 bhakti, which is devotion, love and devotion, compassion, and this could include sutras. This could include a love for a guru. And the ancient sages claimed that this was the most readily available to everyone. You didn't have to devote large amounts of time to a practice, that you could go about your daily life chanting your mantra, loving unconditionally, loving without expectations, loving without entrapments, loving without boundaries. An infinite love, bhakti yoga. Then karma yoga, for those people that needed to do something, action. Karma means action. The yoga of the body. And hatha yoga comes under karma yoga, to use the body to perform selfless tasks, to give of your service, to be of service, to engage the physical world to its fullest. And then Raja Yoga, the royal path of meditation and understanding the energies. A special school of Raja Yoga is Kriya Yoga, that's devoted to focusing this energy, to use this energy, this spiritual energy, Chinese call qi, to use this and develop this and focus this and concentrate this in your practice through rigorous meditation practices. And then jnana yoga, the way of knowledge, or more precisely, wisdom. And this is the process of sorting information to knowledge, to ultimately to wisdom. And this is a tradition that learns to use the mind in a constructive way, without silencing it, but ignoring its propensity to tell you what to do. The mind is not a resource for action. It's not a source. It's not a guide to teach you, to help you live your life. So that's 4 paths, and it's based on, a lot of this I went over the previous, but there's a method in my madness. And then, so 4 paths, and the idea was that of all the different personalities, that one of these would appeal. One of these would choose you, like jnana yoga chose me. The path assisted by the mind by the intellect. But one of these schools would choose you, one of these methods. Or you could pursue one based on what you thought was most compatible with who and what you were. And then Advaita Vedanta talked about that you were always unified. There was no Brahman. Atman was Brahman. It literally, we are God. We are all Buddhas. Because Brahma is the only all-encompassing reality. And there was no separation. What was required is to question niti, not this, not that, until you got to the point where nothing was left or everything was left, depending on how. This was the non-dualism side. There's only one. The yoga schools were seen as dualism in the cursory understanding in the beginning. And Vedanta spoke of instant awakening. As soon as you saw the truth of the oneness, that one is all and all is one, you were awakened. The four paths required some time, progressive awakening, gradual awakening. But the funny thing is, Vedanta, the adherence to this non-dualistic oneness of all, could take many years, but when you were ready, boom, it just happened. Okay, the other school that tells you, depending on which version was most useful, most relevant for you, gave you a path of inquiry. But it's really interesting. It's really interesting when, that always is schism within spirituality, within religion. There's always schism. One teacher comes, and maybe to be unique, I'm not sure of the history, why this schism happens. I just know that it seems to be a part of human nature. This division, this separation, even within training, seeking to remember what you had forgotten, the unity, the non-duality, the all-encompassing infinite. But interesting how my being separate from the mind, my soul, my spirit, my Atman, my Brahman, my Buddha, always sought to unify. That was what I was looking for, unity, union. At some stage, reunion, the idea that I'm not there, that there's a gap between us, that a chasm that I can perilously cross. But Jnana Yoga called me, and today's talk I'm calling the ultimate union. I've introduced the schisms at great length. I've told you that which one appealed to me, which one called me, which one chose me. This is the path of wisdom. With the help, the appropriate help of the mind, where you turn the tables on the mind. From being the slave of your mind, you learn to have your mind work for you instead of its ultimate seeming desire to work against you and to support this ego, to support Maya as reality. So this one chose me. And before abiding awakening came from me, there was always a series of non-abiding awakenings, brief glimpses into what could be. And although it's possible to slide back some, I never, that I was at least aware of, slid too far back. I kept in mind that even though it was maybe slow and laborious, I wanted to make the next step, and I learned to focus on just that step, never even entertaining the top of the mountain shrouded in mist, shrouded in misunderstanding and misinformation, as it turns out. So this using the mind as a tool, having it work for me, instead of being a slave of it, brought my head into alignment. But then I remember I had to make an effort about compassion, about love. Judgment was part and parcel of this mental process for me, and I needed to go to the heart, which I had already found as the source of guidance. The mind never guided me correctly. It always had a vested interest to protect itself and our fragile ego. But my heart was where I turned for guidance. And my heart told me I had to open my heart. So at a certain level of my jnana yoga, my experiment with refining, mining, prospecting information for knowledge that could become wisdom, I could see that judgment was still a big part of me. It was the last thing to leave, I guess. Then I turned to the heart, and the heart said, "You've got to open." My heart had closed, I guess, and that's self-preservation, like for many of us. I was under the mistaken illusion that if I opened my heart, that I would be hurt, that it would be more suffering, when quite the opposite turned out to be true. So I spent a better part of a year on becoming a more compassionate being, to stop judging, to see me in the eyes of others, and to see others in my eye, the unity. This was about a year. And somewhere along here, I gave up a 30-year practice of It's interesting because compassion and using the heart, this is bhakti, unconditional love, bhakti yoga. And I spent a year in this area of work. And Bhakti Yoga includes the vegetarianism, includes the reverence for cows. And I was a vegetarian for 30 years. So in some ways, I was practicing this bhakti, even though I needed to work on judgment. I needed to open my heart. I needed to be compassionate. I needed to be accepting, inclusive. Because the path of mind, it's a kind of a lonely one, and you end up with some kind of exclusivity. I figured it out. The big trap. I figured it out. So at one point, my body was telling me I was 30 to 40 pounds heavier, 20 kilos heavier than I am as I sit in front of you, and had been for many years. And I kind of shrugged it off, saying, well, this is the way I protect myself. You know, if I'm a chubby guy, if I'm a fat guy, no one will really be that interested in me and I'm safe. But after a heart attack at 65, I started looking at things differently. But interestingly, the first thing when I started really paying attention to my body, I was exercising, I was riding my bike. The first thing my body told me is, I need protein. From a vegetarian diet, that's one of the shortcomings of vegetarian diet, is not sufficient protein. My body told me I needed protein. And protein meant chicken. I'm not very fond of fish, but it's the white meats, the chicken, that was the particular protein that was appropriate for me. So now I was into a period of karmic yoga. And karma yoga, and this is the use of the body. And I'm still pretty much in this. I'm preparing for my yearly 100-mile bike ride. Looking forward to it in a couple of weeks. I've been training to prepare for this longer ride. Took a ride of over 50 miles a couple of weeks back. So this immersion into karma yoga, my third venture, and Raja Yoga, which is really about meditation. My meditation practice never has wavered. I used to be a lot more dogmatic, perfectly straight spine. This is the renzai Zen influence that I spent 30 years trying to straighten that spine. Taught that meditation was a battle. Meditation was like going to war. If you weren't sweating, you weren't meditating properly. Well, the ravages of time, and the fact that this didn't seem to be getting me anywhere. This strict adherence, this discipline. So meditation practice has never wavered, but now I'm able to meditate sitting more comfortably. I seldom sit on the ground because it seems like the ground has gotten farther away. It's gotten increasingly harder to get up. So I meditate in a comfortable chair. I practice walking meditation. I learned about living meditation, to remain in a meditative state 24/7. And it becomes automatic. But I still like to sit down for the formal meditation. I still try to devote an hour or two each day to more formal meditation, more mindful meditation. So this is the fourth, the Raja, the Kriya, to start to understand the flow of energy, and that if I had blockages, that it would decrease the efficacy of my body. And it's only then that abiding awakening came to me. It was after giving up expectations, after giving up any kind of guess what this abiding awakening would finally look like. But it had, in the process of review, past lives, and also came the rectification, resolving the puzzle of diametrically opposed, of seemingly opposite, merging the apparent Maya-influenced view of a dual world, me and you, us and them, out there and here. It was by going through in here, and I came out there. That was the inkling, the beginning of this understanding of non-duality. But this understanding was a boom. It was just boom, it just happened. And in that instant, I had no problem reconciling, no problem understanding that love is part of hate, darkness is part of light, light is part of darkness. The unity of all life was a gift. So did I experience sudden enlightenment, the Vedantas, the Advaita, Vedanta adherents talk about? Well, yes. It was certainly sudden, it was certainly overpowering, it was certainly undeniable. It was certain an occurrence that there was no question about. But did I also experience gradual, progressive awakening? Yes, again. So here's another duality. Sudden enlightenment, progressive enlightenment, it's all one. All is one. So it matters not which path you choose. What matters is surrender, forgiveness, starting with yourself, and acceptance that there could be nothing but what is.